In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. Uh, I'm your host, Charles King, and tonight we continue our mission of highlighting voices that inspire, challenge, and transform our communities. On this December 3rd, Season 3, Episode 162, we are joined by a man whose journey spans music, business, coaching, and advocacy. David D. Marshall. From the concert halls of New York, where he performed with Bronx Opera and Opera Ebony, to the boardrooms of Baltimore, where he led his family's historic refuse removal company. David's story is one of resilience, reinvention, and service. As a certified professional life coach and founder of Journey to Josiah Incorporated, David has dedicated himself to empowering 2S LGBTQIA plus youth in foster care, creating safe and affirming spaces for those who need it most. His leadership has been recognized nationally, but his true motivation comes from fatherhood, community, and a belief in second chances. Guiding his path is the influence of his maternal grandfather, Paul Joseph Hardaway, whose wisdom and example continue to shape David's vision of leadership and legacy. Tonight, we'll explore his life story, his work as an entrepreneur, his artistry as an opera singer, and his mission as a coach and advocate. This is more than an interview, it's a celebration of purpose, perseverance, and the power of living with intention. Stay with us because this conversation promises to inspire, uplift. This is America in Black and White, and I'd like to introduce you all to Mr. David Marshall. Hello, sir.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am just excellent. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Is there anything you'd like for the audience to know before we jump into the show?
No, nothing in particular. We'll just wait for whatever you want them to know.
Okay. Well, let's get into the show, and we'll start with your life story and foundations. Can you tell us about your early life and upbringing in Baltimore?
Absolutely. Well, I grew up in Baltimore County, Maryland. Actually, I was born in Turner Station, and I love talking about that because Turner Station has got a lot of history for people of color, for Black people. There are many noted people from Turner Station. Henrietta Lacks being one of the major individuals, we'll say, from Turner Station. The We've had Astronaut, we've had Elmo from the Muppets and all of that. So I was born in Turner Station, grew up in a small community a little outside of Turner Station called Edgemere in Baltimore County. I'm the oldest of three, and my mom is a retired educator, my father a retired business owner.
Oh, wow. So naturally, the stardom comes to you, and it's time for your light to just shine.
I suppose, yeah, maybe so.
So, how did your family shape your values and ambitions?
By example, Um, so within my immediate family, and as we think about me as an entrepreneur, that's all I knew in terms of my father and my paternal grandfather. The business that my grandfather started was he started in 1951. The second, well, now it is the oldest Black-owned refuse removal company in Baltimore County, Maryland. It was the second Black formed, I guess we'll say, a refuse removal company in Baltimore County. My mom's a retired educator, so that very, very much shaped the value I place in education. And then outside of that, as you mentioned, and I love talking about my maternal grandfather, and he shaped faith. Not that I did not grow up in a faith-based home, but I saw it with him. I love to talk about in my grandparents' house, dinner was at 3 p.m. And as soon as every day, but my grandparents were born in 1915. So
Right.
if that's any indication of why things were so regimented, there we have it. And as soon as dinner was finished, my grandfather would start at the bottom of the steps and he would sing just one little line. Oh, there's room at the cross for me. He'd go upstairs to their den, read his daily bread, his word, and take his nap. But I saw faith in action. And at any time where there was any struggle of sorts, I guess I would say, my grandfather's line was, well, boy, everyone's got their road to hoe. Um, but basically on the other side of that, there is the sun will shine again. So hopefully that answers the question in terms of how I was shaped.
Yeah. So then, when you just think about that as to where you are now and how that foundation was set for you, um, how do you carry forth, that torch? Because as this, apparently, there's a legacy that's been created. So with that legacy, how do you actually carry forth all of that and keeping the memories of the foundation that was set for you?
Well, one of the ways is through my son. So my son's middle name is Paul, after my grandfather. So that's one of the major ways I get to keep his memory in particular alive. Um, in terms of the work, my father is still very much a proponent of helping. So with the business that he owned, um, he hired a lot of, I try to make sure I'm using terms politically correct, but he was a second chance, we'll say, employer. Okay.
Okay.
And so he was very much, he's still alive, but he no longer owns the business. So that's why I'm fluctuating between present and past tense. But he very much believed in making sure that those who might have had a very, very rocky start were able to have some level of uh, of a second chance. And he always wanted to make sure that his employees knew that someone believed in them. Um, and one of the other things that he always did was he would always tell his employees, now, this is not where you retire from. You use this as a launching board to then moving out and finding something a little better. So I learned help from them. And then at many different times in my life growing up, close friends of ours lived with us at periods of time. So I learned from them that we were blessed to be a blessing.
Right.
Um, and then as a musician, my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, I started out my musical life playing the piano. And I would take my keyboard to my grandparents' house every weekend. I was there most weekends, and I would play all of his favorite hymns. And one day he said to me, boy, can you sing one of those hymns that you're playing? And I assured him that I could not. And he said to me, well, if you try, I'm sure that you could. And so I reluctantly tried, and apparently something came out, and he went to calling sisters and a great aunt. So sister in New York, sister in Virginia, who, this is the funny thing for me, it was a Baptist hymn, and this particular sister in Virginia was a Jehovah's Witness. He could have cared less. He still wanted me to sing this good Baptist hymn to her. And a great aunt of, well, not a great aunt, but an aunt of his who at the time was 112 years old and was still living on her own in Farmville, Virginia. So they were probably my first major audience, I guess we'll say. So yeah, that's I guess that sums it all up in a nutshell there.
So, so what role did education play in your journey?
It was a non-negotiable. I have two college-educated parents who both had wonderful careers, and basically, it was expected that we continue education, and as they would say, make something of yourself. Now, it's always interesting the word something. So something is pretty broad, right? So I guess something could have been anything, but I'm assuming that it was something productive and something to be respected. So I would say that's probably the major role. And then, of course, having a mother who was an educator, well, you had to speak correctly because every other word was corrected if it was mispronounced or used in the wrong tense. And but there was something placed in us to take pride in what we did, and to make sure that we do not settle for mediocrity. That was one of the themes of a youth day at the church I grew up in. I can't remember what the whole theme was, but that was the first time I ever heard the word mediocrity. And so we were taught not to, that was not something that we could settle for. We had to soar above that. And I would venture to believe that that was not only because of having educated parents and a mother as an educator, but the obvious growing up in America as a Black man, or they were raising three Black men. We know that we just had to be just a little bit more qualified, right? And we couldn't have a B plus, we had to have the A plus. So those things were very, very much impressed upon us.
So, how did your maternal grandfather Joseph influence your life overall?
Wonderful question. So just for clarity's sake, he was Paul Joseph, but Joseph being his middle name. How did he influence my life overall? Well, I think I'll go back to what I said, and it had to do with faith. So I was the charismatic, we'll say, one of everyone in my family. So the people who were in the church I grew up in often made a lot of fun of me, not in a bad way, but I was definitely that one, as I would tell anybody, who ran through church aisles, fell out all over in the floor and all of this other business. But the thing of it was, my grandfather seemed to get it. And it's not that anyone in my immediate family did not. Well, I think to an extent they didn't, but it wasn't something that was, it was not something that they made fun of me, for lack of a better term, for. But my grandfather said to me, as it pertained to church in particular, boy, you've got to find a church of your kind. Mm-hmm. He also impressed upon me that I had to praise in the way that the Lord led and guided me. Mm-hmm. I'll also say this. Again, as I said, my grandfather was born in 1915. Now, you would expect that maybe I heard a lot of really challenging stories because of the era in which he grew up in, but I did not. As a matter of fact, I don't think I heard anything of struggle or anything of suffering or any of those things. What I heard and what I saw was the evidence of overcoming. And moving on in spite of. My grandfather did not have his first car until he was in his 40s, I believe. He worked at Bethlehem Steel Company here in Baltimore County, Maryland. He walked from his home for quite a while to a bus that brought him quite a difference from East Baltimore City out here to the area that I live in now, to that steel company, through all kinds of weather conditions, but never a complaint. He was in World War II. He talked about that cold, hard ground that he had to sleep on, but never a complaint. But I guess this goes back to the thing he used to say to us, in that we all have our road to hoe, right? So he understood that, as as a gospel song that I like to sing says, and the song is "Be Grateful." God never promised sunshine, but a little rain mixed with God's sunshine. They're on every side, no matter what. There's something to be grateful for.
Well, sounds like your grandfather instilled a lot of strength and resilience in you, because,
Absolutely.
and just knowing that, of our ancestors that came from that time frame, because I can tell you, my grandmother was also, and grandfather was also in that time frame.
Mhm.
And so just when you just think about it, I mean, they always found a way to make things work regardless of the case. And of course, it's like just doing what you gotta do is the whole thing. And
Mhm.
so I can see that more. It sounds like, with that strength and resilience that he has helped you to understand how to get past things, has actually paid off, and has actually put you in positions to not only make your life better, but your son as well. And that's always something that you have to, just be mindful of, because I think that's wonderful when you can see how the legacies continue and how they continue. That's a really good thing.
Absolutely.
What lessons from him continue to guide you today, though? What are some of those lessons?
Prayer. Really, and the importance of it. He was a very much a praying man.
Oh,
So that's probably one of the greatest lessons, because I'll also say this, that also taught me relationship with God and
okay.
not religion. Okay. Because we, as people of color, a lot of us, we did the church thing every Sunday because that was what we did. That was just really a cultural thing,
Yes.
but it taught us institutionalism
Hmm.
and not necessarily relationship with God.
Hmm.
And so, because he talks so much about prayer and the importance of it,
Hmm.
that probably is one of the most important things, because with that, then I learned to lean into to the voice of God and not to the voice of self or really anyone else around me.
Hmm. So, what was the turning point that led you from teaching to opera?
So I guess to talk about that, I should probably go back to even how the opera thing even began.
Okay.
So as I said to you, I played the piano. I started out when I was 9,
Hmm.
and I got a little bored with the piano,
Hmm.
but I still was not confident in the singing piece.
Hmm.
And then I found out that one of my favorite gospel artists by the name of Daryl Coley
Hmm.
studied voice. And that was the reason why he was able to do so many intricate things with his voice.
Hmm.
And I wanted to do those things. But weirdly enough, when I sang, I always had this operatic sound. And as you can imagine, as a young boy in a Black Baptist church, who wanted to really hear that? That wasn't necessarily the most exciting sound. I didn't have that growl. I didn't have every run under the sun. It just was very straight and very, very refined. And I don't know where it came from, because that's what it was. So when I was told this, I'm like, oh my God, I've got to go study voice. And
Right.
so when I was 16, I started studying voice at the then New Shiloh School of Music here in Baltimore. It later on became the Carter School of Music, named after the world renowned Nathan Carter of Morgan State University. And I'll never forget that first voice lesson I went in. I was studying with his wife, Jean Carter, and she asked me, of course, what brought me there? Kind of like the question you asked me about what took me to this operatic thing. And I said, well, I want to sing like Daryl Coley. And she looked at me like I had about 20 heads and said, well, as if I know who Daryl Coley is, you're going to sound like David Marshall. Well, if my father, mother, both of them had not already paid for that year of tuition, I probably would have said, okay, I'll just quit today, because that's not what I came in here for. But of course, that was not, an option. So I had to kind of deal with the possibility of sounding like what I did not want to come in there sounding like. And so, but in studying and hearing these more refined sounds and singing in different languages, I began to appreciate that this was something different that not everyone was capable of doing. So while maybe I could learn a gospel song early in the morning before I got in front of people to sing it, or maybe an R&B song, in the car on the way, it took some time to learn an art song or an aria. It took some time for that. As we singers say, it had to get in our bodies. You had to learn that language. You had to learn everything musically, because you can't just go off and sing whatever you want to sing in that. That's not what Schubert, whatever Schubert wrote there is what you needed to sing. Right. And for those who don't know, Schubert is a composer, was a composer, excuse me. And so it took some time to get there, but I began to appreciate that. So we'll fast forward now. I taught for some years, and after a while, I just decided I actually wanted to explore the career that I actually went to school for, because I didn't go to school for education. Education kind of fell in my lap. I wasn't interested in doing it. But I knew at a certain time it was time for me to have that experience, because I didn't want to live in regrets. And I remember saying that to my students the very last year I was teaching. I taught at a school called Harlem Park Middle School in West Baltimore. And I remember how it was really quite special when I told my students, actually I didn't say my students, I called them my children. When I told my children I was not returning the next year and what I was going to do. And so initially they were sad. But I'll never get one of my students who said, well, Mr. Marshall, you got to go. You got to do what you're supposed to do, because you can sing. So you got to go, and you got to go do that. How incredible. It was a 7th grader, actually. How incredible that I was given the blessing of my children to go and to do this thing that made my heart happy.
Wow. That, that in itself, as you told that story, especially when we talked about that, I was just like, oh my God, I don't think you understand the impact of that. You might understand the impact of that, because, I want you to think about this. You, a young Black male, and you're actually deciding that you want to go do opera. That's rare, for one thing, in our communities, but we're so talented. There's no telling what we can do. We can do everything. And so just when you think about that, I mean, what does that feeling come to you as like for you, shall I say, when you can look at the people in your community that look up to you and they see these wonderful things and this part of art that you're doing?
Well, what it says, or what it does for me, is leading by example, that this is not just a white thing, right?
Right, exactly.
That this is something that no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, you can do this if this is what you want to do. And I love being able to give some exposure, because my very first full recital was in my home church, the Very Baptist Church, Shiloh Baptist Church of Edgemere, Maryland, that I grew up in. And I was 19 when I did my first full recital. And almost everyone from my church came. They had not 2 clues as to what I was saying. They didn't care. They came because it was me, and they wanted to support me.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
They wanted to love on me and make sure that I kept going. That was one of the many things that was so special about that church. And they sat there looking like they were just all the way. And I was like, Lord bless them. I know they don't know what I'm saying up here. And then there was my grandfather in the second row. And I definitely know he did not know what I was saying, but smiling from ear to ear while I was singing whatever to them. But it did not matter. They wanted to see me do this thing. And that was the village.
Yes.
That helped to groom me. And I also did not have to feel like I was doing so. Like, no one said anything to me about, why would you want to do that? Mm-hmm. They celebrated it. Mm-hmm. They celebrated it. Mm-hmm.
So how did fatherhood change your perspective on life and leadership?
Well, fatherhood just did a whole lot in general. But I am raising a young Black boy in America. And because of the examples that were set for me, I knew that I had to go that much further for him. Fatherhood has given me something greater to, this will sound, I don't know what it'll sound like, but I'm going to say it. It's given me something greater to live for. And it's given me a reason to aspire to very, 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 very high heights. Because I have this little boy watching every move that I make. So much so that if a word slips out that probably shouldn't, he's first to say, language. But, you know, I also tell people this. One thinks that they have loved, but I don't think that I really knew what it was until Josiah came into my life, until he was literally placed in my arms at 2 weeks old. And at that point, I felt inside of me that I have just, I've got to aspire to that much more because of him. Prior to that, I wanted to make my parents, my grandparents proud. But now there is him. And I'll also say this. As I've talked about before, I adopted my son. And I was chosen by his birth parents. Chosen. And I don't know if you or any of the viewers can understand the magnitude of being chosen by one's birth parents. See, because there's a stigma when it comes to adoption and to adopt into birth parents in particular.
Right.
People ask very inappropriate and invasive questions that I don't answer because that is no one's business. But what I do love to discuss is being chosen, because Josiah is and was the best of them. And they did this out of love. And of all the people that they could have chosen, they bestowed this huge honor upon me. So not only do I have a huge responsibility to Josiah, but I have a huge responsibility to the two who brought him into this world. So, you know, I got a lot I've got to do.
Well, I just want to tell you that you know, for what you're doing and how you got to this point, I want you to know that that's very inspiring. And you know, to hear the love that you have for your son, that makes it even better. Because I think, as you say, a lot of times, a lot of parents, especially when they're young, they may think that they understand parenting, but they don't, because there is no manual. So that means that you got to get down in the grind because there's another part of work that's got to get done.
Absolutely.
And it seems like you've gotten there, and you're working from that, and you're growing.
I'm trying. But it's funny when you said the word young. Thank God I wasn't young. because I couldn't have done it young. And sometimes I wonder why I'm doing it old, but that's a whole nother kind of conversation.
So, what does legacy mean to you personally?
It means foundation. And I also love talking about legacy because I think a lot about that. And I thought a lot about it for years. And legacy is the thing that you obviously want to leave behind. And I think a lot about, well, how would I want someone to remember me? And, you know, you hear all of the major celebrities getting asked this question. I'm not one of them, but I thought a lot about that. Because one, at my demise, I don't want to have to lie. You know, you go to the funerals, I'm sure people have gone. You hear these things, and you're like, so now was that the person laying up there, or was that a figment of your imagination? I don't want anyone to have to lie about the life that I lived.
Right.
I wanted to be very, very accurate and authentic because I actually lived that life. So legacy for me is very important. And that's why I actually walk in the calling that God has had on my life. Because none of this was a choice. I can assure you of that. And because the calling was a calling of help, of love, I want that to be the thing. I don't, that's important to me, that it's love and of help. Yeah. So hopefully I answered that.
So let's move over and talk a little bit about your entrepreneurship and your business leadership. Can you tell us, how did you step into leadership at Marshall Jr. Incorporated?
Well, my father retired, and I'm the oldest of three sons. My father, so as I said, my grandfather started Marshall's Marshall's trash removal in 1951. My father then started his portion of the company in 1979, the year that I was born. In 1987, my grandfather retired, and my father ended up with my grandfather's part of the business and the portion that he already had. After 38 years, he was tired. He'd had enough. And so it kind of just fell on me. And so the funny thing I like to say is the most unglamorous job I've ever had. Because as I've said, it was a trash removal company. And, you know, I taught and I was on stage performing. And then I ended up in a yard full of trash trucks. And
funny.
And everyone in my family knows I have a very weak stomach. So walking in there, and sometimes, especially in the summer, sometimes I said, what in the entire, hell has my life fallen into here? But it was with great pride, though, because I understood the legacy there. I understood that, again, there was history with this, and there was something that I had to carry on. But I had to do a lot of learning on the job because, one, I knew nothing about a trash removal company. I didn't know anything about that. Nothing. So I had to do a lot of learning on the job. And then I had to learn how to own and operate a business because I hadn't done that either. And so it grew me quickly. And I will also say this, it strengthened me in ways that I could never have imagined. Because the other part of it was more than just owning this business and dealing with the day-to-day. It thrust me into a place of politics, so to speak. Right. And so, and dealing with local government, because these were appointments by the county executive. And so I had to learn very, very quickly how to maneuver in a political climate. And that was before this one that we're in now with the individual that will remain nameless.
Mhm.
But that was challenging, very, very challenging. Um, but yeah, I feel like I deviated a little bit, but yes.
So, so like in for futuristic plans, if you planned out pretty far, as far as your business goes, when are you going to implement and integrate merge Josiah into the business so he can start learning?
So very good question. So the refuse removal company I no longer own. I'm proud to say that I was able to turn that over to a young man who worked for me, who moved up from thrower on the back of the trash truck to then I created a position as lead thrower. He then became a driver, assistant manager of operations. And then when I had had enough, after 4 years, my father did it 38. I could not. After 4 years, when I'd had enough, I was so proud to be able to turn that over to him, a young, early 30-some-year-old Black man.
Mhm.
Now, as it pertains to the founding of Journey to Josiah, which is the organization that I have founded, what's so funny about it is he already has somewhat of an entrepreneurial mind because he'll say to me, "Are you going to our business today?" I don't know where that came from. Our business. We just had our third annual gala for the organization, Journey to Josiah. He asked my brother, probably the day after that, when is my next gala? So I think naturally
Mhm.
he's ready to lead, um, because there's also this organization that bears his name, Journey to Josiah. So there's already something inside of him that has given him a sense of pride, we'll say, but then a sense of purpose.
Mhm.
Now he doesn't understand fully what this organization does and how it operates.
Mhm.
And prayerfully, after he understands that, he may still be interested. But nonprofit is different than for profit. I can't just say, "Here, Josiah, here is your business," as he calls it. But prayerfully, at some point, there'll be something there that he wants to do to give back, because that's a huge thing for me. I want him to be able to give back.
So, what challenges did you face leading a 70-year-old family business?
So, how long? um, all right, I'll just be candid. So, in Baltimore County, all of the collectors have routes. So there are different areas of Baltimore County that we all were responsible for.
Mhm.
And I was responsible for an area that is known for overt bigotry.
Mhm.
So much so that there was a time that there was a resident in this particular community that put his trash in the trees.
In the
Uh-huh.
tree.
In the trees. And God bless this employee who, God rest his soul, he apparently was going into the trees to get it. And then when I found out about it, after I finished laying his soul to rest,
Mhm.
then I needed to know exactly who that person was. Because what that was saying was, we regard you as monkeys, yeah, to climb up in trees to get the trash. Because after all, you're Black, so you that's what you're supposed to be doing anyways, is picking up our trash.
Mhm.
But then I'm going to add insult to injury and then put it in the trees.
Mm.
So the N word was flung on a regular basis. Pit bulls were set on some of my employees. Um, so it was a hard climate to
Yeah.
deal with in this particular area of Baltimore County. So then setting that aside, as I said, there was a political climate to have to navigate.
Yep.
And no matter what your political affiliation,
Mhm.
there are games that are played.
Big time.
And a lot of the game is the money game, right?
Yep. Number
And
one.
and in order to move forward, you have to kind of grease some pockets, right? Um, and I wasn't. And so I suffered because of it. Our company was one of the lowest paid in Baltimore County. And this is so interesting because I've never spoken about this part publicly.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to hire an attorney to actually get the salaries of all of the employees. And it's government and it wasn't public. And I had to hire an attorney to do that because it was a rumor that then was proven. And there are only 4 black haulers in Baltimore County. And we were, of course, amongst the lowest paid. While my white counterparts were making millions, I had to operate an entire business off of 6 figures. So it was a whole effort to shut me down. So perseverance, fight, resilience, all of that stuff that we talk about with my grandfather, I had to put it into action.
Yep.
Because I was fighting a huge fight. 157 me, fighting not only a community of crazy people, but a government of crazy people.
Yes, sir.
None of whom meant me any good.
Yep.
All of whom wanted to see me fail.
Yep.
But see, we as people of color are built differently.
That's what they forget.
So you weren't going to run me away from anything. No. Because again, too, I have, as you asked, I have a son who at that time was, by the time I turned that company over, he was 4, but he still was looking at me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't going to show him how to just fall out and die. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to show him how to bend the knee, as we keep hearing.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how I'm built. So it was very challenging to own a business in that particular area of Baltimore County. Mm-hmm. But no matter what the political affiliation with a government, and we know how politics can go, it's rather dirty. So yeah.
Wow. But see, but I gotta say, you see, I think the practice and the learnings that you got from the grandfather, that's when they kicked into play, because you're just proving just how resilient that you are, and that regardless of the case, you push through. And see, that's the inspiration, because a lot of times, as you say, some people just say, well, I'm not gonna worry about that. I'll just hang that up. That's not you.
Right.
I'm so proud of you for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I
really am. How did you expand opportunities for reentry citizens?
I love that question. So again, kind of following my father's lead, I became affiliated with reentry programs, and actually, if I remember correctly, some of them began to reach out to me, and so I really wasn't familiar with that concept. But I worked very, very much hand in hand with a lot of these programs to hire specifically from these programs. And then after that, I did something that probably shocked even me. I even went and interviewed employees in our prison system here in downtown Baltimore. They were gentlemen who were on their way back out, and some of them actually they had work release programs. And so I went in, I interviewed, and there was something special about that. My life was a very, very comfortable life growing up. My parents gave us a wonderful life. But again, as I said earlier, they taught us how to be a blessing. They taught us how to give back. And so even though that was different from me, that was not anything that was something that I had much exposure to, it did something for me to be able to go into these places to talk to men who look like me, two different life experiences, vastly different. But to be able to say, hey, you know what? You are worth it. There is something greater for you. Don't worry about what it looks like right now. There is something more for you. And there are some people here on the outside that want to help guide you through. And so I think it was more the thing of, I just was happy to know that I was able to in some way help to shape maybe someone else's path.
So what did winning Employer of the Year mean to you?
It meant a lot because the name of the award was the Henrietta Lacks Employer of the Year Award. So just understand the legacy of Henrietta Lacks, right? That was something huge to carry.
Right.
Also, I won that award. I don't think I'd even been in business a full year myself. So apparently I made that much of a mark really, really quickly. And so as I remember the award ceremony, my son was an infant. I think he was, he was a little baby. He was maybe 6, 7 months old. As I'm being awarded this high honor, he was there, my mom. But what it said to me was, I'm doing the work that God has called me to do. And that's all I needed to do, was the work that God called me to do. And I was making some level of an impact. And so it was huge. It was a huge honor for me.
So how do you balance tradition with innovation in your business?
So let me ask you, are we talking about the refuse removal company or the nonprofit?
Actually, let's allude that to the removal.
So tradition to innovation. Really good question. I'm trying to think about that. I might have to circle back to the tradition part, but to the innovation part. So when I took over the business, there were a lot of infrastructural things that I needed to do because, and I don't think my dad would really mind me saying this, business, like the kind of the office kind of thing, the behind the scenes, that was just not what he felt like being bothered with. And in those days when he started it, there wasn't so much that you really needed to do on that and just get out there and do the job. Right. But as time went on, there were a lot of things that needed to be done just in terms of a system itself. And so being able to bring the business up to a current space was huge, right? To have an online presence. There was no online presence for that. There was not even an email address for that prior. Imagine that. But and that was in 2017 when I took over. But being able to bring it to a current space and to have it operate from a space infrastructurally. Notice I'm saying infrastructurally of excellence. To have an office, because my father operated the business out of their home. His office was in the basement of their home. So then to have a whole separate office space, that was huge. Was huge. And I think for many it'd be like, oh, okay, so what? But that wasn't my grandfather. When he started, the office was in his basement of he and my grandmother's home. So just to have a dedicated space, to have created a logo, like these kinds of things. And these were not things that were in my father's thought process, really, because it was like, I got to get the job done. He always said, I just got to get this trash picked up. That no one cares about anything, is I got to get this trash. And it was true. Mm-hmm. But that part was already operating. The part that was not was an infrastructure. And so to be able to create positions, there were no positions, as it were. There wasn't a manager of operations. There was no hierarchy. There was my dad.
Right.
There were all the employees and then my dad. Mm-hmm. Well, to have begun to create positions, like I said, lead throwers, who was training all the throwers, because what people probably don't know is that is one of the most dangerous jobs of all. Throwing trash, there is extremely dangerous, particularly for those who are the throwers, right? They're on the back of a moving vehicle. Mm-hmm. So to have created the position for someone to train, there was no assistant manager of operations, there was no office manager. My dad did it all. And I don't know how he did all of that. He did it all. At one point, he was doing the payroll himself every Thursday night, sitting in his office, writing checks, mm-hmm. with some kind of grid out, some kind of thing out, doing the taxes. I don't know what it was. I know I couldn't do it. So to be able to bring it to a different space that operated like big business was, even though it was small, mm-hmm. I had it operating like big business. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot that I did to innovate that business. And I will also say this, because I take much pride in it. I would venture to say that many of my white counterparts were not as educated as I. I came from education. I was a department chair when I left education. So I thought of things from a very, very administrative lens.
Right.
And so some of the ways that I operated were far and above some of those who were making the millions, mm-hmm. just because I didn't have the right complexion. But those things were huge, because then people were kind of looking at what we did and how we operated, how there was a chain of command. So yeah, I guess that's what I would say in terms of innovation.
So what role does entrepreneurship play in community empowerment?
The ability to be able to hire from the community. That was another thing. We hired from the community. Most of our employees, at least in the beginning, were from Turner Station, where my grandparents lived, where my father was born, and where I was born. They were right from the community, right? So that was huge. As time went on, being able to then expand that a bit, mm-hmm. hire outside of Turner Station, but still hiring predominantly people that look like you and I. Mm-hmm. Again, it was huge for us to be able to do that. So I guess that's what I would say to that.
So how do you mentor others in business leadership?
Thick skin. Particularly where it came to that. And I'll say specifically to the young man who was my successor. He saw firsthand how you had to maneuver. And what I taught him was that you don't bow and you don't bend to anyone. They may try to intimidate you, but you shall not be intimidated. There are many times where I left meetings and I internally was crumbling. But see, this is where the performance part came in. So when you mess up on stage, you can't stop that performance. You just keep on going, right? You cannot stop. No. So I learned as a professor. So all of that really, it did help for me to go and get a degree and get degrees in performance, because I had to maintain a composure, even if I forgot all of the words on stage, and I did that many times. I could not lose composure with that young man in particular. He could not lose composure. He could not become unglued, feel whatever you feel internally, but never let anyone see you crack.
Right.
So in mentorship, in particular with that business, it was a matter of maintaining your strength. Also, my father always said to us growing up that he would always protect us, but we had to be right. Now, he wasn't going to do any protecting of foolishness, but be right. So I always said to this young man, you conduct this business fully ethically. Don't cut any corners. Don't do it. They can do it. You cannot. Because when you do it, you're going to get shut down and maybe go to jail. They will continue to succeed and then become the president of the United States. So you cannot do that.
Okay, look, that shit was way too big.
Right. Only they can do that in America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. And so I told him, as my father, you've got to be right. Cross every T and dot every I. Your finances must be. Don't play with the books, as they would say. Don't play with that. Don't go in here spending money in any kind of. No. Make sure everything is run top tier so that no one has an excuse or a reason to come in here and try to shut you down. You cannot cut corners. You cannot cut corners. And so I would venture to believe that he might be still doing well with that, because that was in 2021 and we're in 2025 and that business still operates.
So what legacy do you hope Marshall Jr. Inc. leaves behind?
You know what? I hope it leaves behind Black excellence.
There you go.
Because when we think about who started it, that my grandfather who started that, he was born in, we're going to say 1927-ish. He didn't have a degree. And to be honest with you, I don't even know if he had a high school diploma. I don't know if my paternal grandfather, I know that my maternal grandparents did not. I don't know about my paternal grandparents. But with that, coming from Appomattox, Virginia, and he too was sitting in his office, in his basement, writing out these checks, maintaining all of the accounting, every bit of the business structure. Those things were huge. They were huge. So laying that foundation of, again, like I said, Black excellence, but also for the young man who owns it now, he knows very, very well the history. Because see, that history is the thing that is going to continue to carry you, because you've got to know where you have come from. Even though you're not a Marshall, you know where you've come from. You know how you got here, and you carry it from that same foundation. Because my grandfather wasn't given a handout. Not that Black man. He was not given a handout. My father was not given a handout, and I damn sure was not. Now, people might have said, well, that was what do they call nepotism. Yeah. Well, yeah, it could have very well been, but that wasn't any nepotism that some of these other people are beneficiaries of. My nepotism still took me through a whole lot of changes.
Yes, sir. Yes, it did. So let's venture over to your life coaching and your journey to Josiah. What inspired you to become a certified professional life coach?
So I giggle because one of my best friends said to me, you will fix a life. Like, what? I thought only Iyanla did that. I didn't know I was over here doing it. I figured, well, hey, if I've been fixing the lives, let me go ahead and become certified to fix the lives. You know, you want to be qualified to fix them if that's what you've been doing. And then my other best friend said, you should probably be paid to do this. Okay, so I'm fixing lives and I should be paid to do it. So I've been doing too much for free for too long. But you know, with it, because it's what I've been doing. I've been loving on people. I've been helping people because that's what I learned to do. And so, short of going back to school to get another degree in a helping profession, it just made sense to me to, and I didn't want to come from a therapeutic standpoint. I wanted to come from that coaching and that cheerleader standpoint, because I had cheerleaders in my corner that helped me to understand purpose and helped to guide me along. So that was one of the major things. Additionally, when it comes to Journey to Josiah, we are implementing new programming in terms of helping 2S LGBTQ youth that are in care, because 2S LGBTQ youth in care age out of foster care at higher rates. It's just not talked about. We talk about, you know, the age groups that age out higher, Black boys aging out higher, Latino, the children from the Latino community, all of these, but we don't ever talk about the young 2S LGBTQIA plus youth who are aging out at higher rates. And so when we say aging out, that means that they will have come of age, and many of them will never have had a family to call their own. Imagine something like that. And for those of us who have families, we could never imagine not having someone put us to bed at night and say, I love you, send you out of the door every day saying, I love you, have a great day. To even get a hug on I got hugs every day of my life. Imagine that. And so with that, I knew that I wanted to help support these youth, because I know I can't parent all of them. I don't have a home big enough for all of them, but I knew that there needed to be somebody in their corner who helped them to understand that you have purpose here.
Right.
And let me help lead and guide you to that purpose. Not only getting to that purpose, but also having a sense of pride in who you are, because especially now, you would believe that you are some kind of foreign creature if you identify as a part of this community. No, you're not. You were created uniquely by God. That's for the church people who want to call us spirits. And whoever's in the church can say amen or log off. But this is the thing. This is what was in my spirit. So I needed them to know that they are uniquely and beautifully made.
Yep.
And so that too put me on the path of, you know, wanting to coach, but add legitimacy. Because again, as my friend said, I've been coaching lives forever. So now I wanted to do it legitimately. Even though I will say this, in the state of Maryland, you don't have to be certified to do that. Yeah. But I want it to be.
So look, I got some comments here before I move on to the next question. I got some comments here in the chat, and two of them are from Dr. Whitty. I'll put the first one up on the screen. As you see it there, he says singing came natural for him. It's the piano and keyboard he wished he could play. And his second comment is be more in the house.
Yes.
Do you want to comment to those before I do the last one?
Sure. So why not? You can still play that. There is no age limit on learning anything. And if that's something that you want to do, you got to go and do it, Dr. Whitty. What you waiting on, sir? Be more. I can lead you and guide you to where you need to go. I'll coach you. Go ahead on. Now, I can't teach you to play piano, but I can play, but I can't teach you. But we get there. You've got to do it. You got to do it.
And we have one here from Sean Marshall. I'll put that on the screen. He says a language. I'm assuming he was talking about when you was talking about you doing the opera.
I don't know that he is. So let me give you a little history on Sean Marshall. He happens to be my brother.
Okay.
And so he's probably heard my son say to me a time or two, language.
Okay.
Thanks, Sean, for tuning in to co-sign on your nephew there. Yes.
So, so how did the adoption of your son Josiah lead to Journey to Josiah?
Wonderful question. So, um, I told my story, if you will, in November of 2020. So we were in the pandemic. Yeah, we were in the pandemic at that point in time,
We most
and
definitely was.
very much in it. And I was walking through North Point State Park, is a few blocks over from our house, and I am very connected to God through trees and through the water. And so as I was walking through that park, I heard the Spirit of the Lord say to me, "Tell your story." So of course I was a little lost on that because I didn't know exactly what story we were referring to. Um, and then it became very clear it's your journey to fatherhood. So I did my first not Instagram Live. I've still never done one of those. Facebook Live. So the joke of Facebook is I only showed up on Facebook once a year to thank people for wishing me a happy birthday. And then I signed off until next September. So the whole idea of me doing a Facebook Live was really a joke. And so when I got in front of Facebook, I remember sitting there saying, is someone here? Do you see, am I on here? So there was that. But I told my journey. And in reading those comments, there were some colleagues of mine who, one of them in particular asked me, how did I do that? Where did I go? What would he do? And there was another one who said to me that he did not know it was legal to adopt as a single gay man. Imagine that. Now, when I started the process, I was more concerned about discriminatory things happening. I never thought about legality. So it became very, very clear to me that there was greater work that I had to do. Because for me, and this is something else I always say, when you want to become a parent, you have to do it because there's nothing at all that will substitute. You can have every niece, every nephew, every godchild. You can, as I did, having taught probably several hundred children in my lifetime. And none of that will compensate for being called daddy or mommy. There are two things one never gets over in life: the loss of a child and never having had one when you wanted to have one. And so I remember what it was when I wanted to be a dad, like when it just was pressed on, like I just couldn't get that urgency out of me. And so imagine if there were other people who had that same feeling, but then thought that that was not possible, was a little bit too much for me. And so Journey to Josiah was founded in order to help individuals from the 2S LGBTQIA plus community navigate the process. So I taught the entire process, but then in the end, they were going to get their, what I call their adoption home. So meaning if you were going through a private agency, then you were in a private agency that was an inclusive agency where you would be placed and no one was going to shut you out for who you are. If it was public, meaning going through the foster care system, teaching them how to navigate that space. And there are other means, but really the two main spaces that I worked with were those who were embarking upon private and those who were embarking upon public adoption.
So, what is the mission of Journey to Josiah?
So it has changed now. So whereas at one point it was to ensure that 2S LGBTQIA plus families were able to navigate the adoption system and children would also be able to find loving and loving homes within the families of 2S LGBTQIA plus individuals. Now our mission now is to support 2S LGBTQIA plus youth in care in navigating life after.
Mm, okay. And so, how do you empower 2S LGBTQ IA plus youth in foster care?
I empower them by helping to instill a sense of pride. I also empower them by loving on them. And when I say that, letting them know there's somebody here that loves and cares. I think that so much of the reason why I, in particular, and I would say my brothers were able to accomplish was because someone loved us enough. And because of that love, they pushed us.
Mhm.
And so that is the theme. And then also helping them to know that you were created with purpose. You weren't just placed here just to take up space and breathe in somebody else's oxygen.
Mm.
No, you were created for a purpose. And so empowering them to know that you are unique, you're special, you're wonderful, and there's something for you to do.
So let's transition over to your opera and music career.
Mhm.
So, how did you discover your passion for opera?
By studying it, because I didn't grow up in a household where we were listening to it. But what I will say is, and this goes back to the church I grew up in, which is very, very special to me. Um, I don't know that we have too much of this now in the church world, but I grew up in a church where we were exposed to many different styles of sacred music. So, yes, we sang gospel music. Yes, we sang hymns. We sang spirituals and we sang anthems. All of those different genres
Mhm,
lent themselves to different styles of singing.
mhm,
And so there was a song when we went to our new church, it was an anthem called I Will Give Thanks. And a neighbor that I grew up with, a fabulous soprano, by the name of Miss Ray Gay. She was singing the solo, and then there was a little tenor part in there with it, and I had to then use my very classical sounding voice at this part of the song, and I was like, that was exciting to me.
mhm,
But being in Shiloh, I learned to appreciate the different sounds and the different styles of singing because we had accomplished, trained musicians. I also love to say this, even though this was not, she was not, is not an opera singer. My very first solo was given to me by one of the Clare Award singers. For those who are familiar with the Clare Award singers, her name is Madeline Statham. But even she helped to instill in me a joy of singing, a pride in singing. And then who better to learn from? Because I saw her doing it again on the gospel side at a very high level. But I would say that the passion and the the joy, the understanding, the exposure really started at church.
mhm. So can you tell us what was it like performing with Bronx Opera and Opera Ebony? Now, that's got to be a wonderful experience.
It was a wonderful experience. I'm gonna go to Opera Ebony first,
Okay.
as you can imagine why.
Mhm,
So, Opera Ebony is the oldest Black opera company in the United States. Now, they're not really um, operating in the way that they once were in terms of doing fully staged operas any longer, but they are still doing some programming. But to be able to um, work with one of its founders, um, um, Dr. Wayne Saunders, um, and coach with him, um, and see his joy of music. It was amazing. Even though at that point I was finished my graduate study, and I still could not connect to a lot of the European music in the way that I could connect to spirituals. And I
mhm,
remember with him, he is the one who probably shaped the way that I approached singing uh, music by European composers. So I was working on this aria for an audition, and he stopped me and he said, he started flipping through my book, and he found a spiritual. I think it was Here's One. Talk about a child that do love Jesus. So he said, sing this. And at first I'm thinking, now I've got this big audition. Here, this man done flip. They don't want to hear that in the audition. Why is he over there? Doesn't make any sense to me. I got this big old French song, and we over here. All right. So I started singing it. So then he stopped abruptly. All right, where are we going now? So he said to me, now I want you to sing this aria the same way you sung that spiritual. Bring that same joy, bring that same energy over to this aria. And I was thinking, I don't even know how to do that. Now, obviously, I also say this. I didn't know what I was saying because you had to study and understand the language. So I wasn't singing gibberish to myself. Okay.
Mhm.
So I knew what I was saying, but it just seemed like I had to be a little bit more refined with that. And I couldn't bring a lot of my own soul and my own passion to it.
Mhm.
So I started, and I think it still wasn't meeting the mark. So he went back, and I started singing Talk About a Child, Do Love Jesus Again. Then we went back over to it. I think we did that maybe 3 times, because I think by the 3rd time I finally got what he wanted me to do, because I was really lost the first 2 times.
Mhm.
But I say that because being there in that particular company
Mhm.
really, really shaped how I approached singing European classical music.
Yes. Yes.
It was a different thing, and there was nothing to be separated from who I am as a Black man, as Leontine Price would say, separated me from my roots.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
no, bring those over here, because see, that's what makes you unique. The other European people, they don't, that's not their story. They don't have that story. They don't have the story of how I've overcome.
Mhm.
So because you have the story of how you overcome, there's something different on the inside of you, and how you approach your music that needs to reflect it.
Mhm.
And it began to reflect it. And so that when I was singing, the one thing, even if my voice was shoddy that day, people would say to me that I was very compelling. I've always been called a very compelling artist.
Mhm.
But that's because, and I'll say this, you can't be taught that. So Dr. Summers did not teach me that. He coached me in ways of understanding, because I knew how to do it. I just didn't know how to bring it over to the European music.
Mhm.
And so now I sing any of my European music. So from that same spirit, the same emotion, everything that I do, and Talk About a Child, I Do Love Jesus, goes
Mhm.
over to a mes ami.
Mhm. And so what's the difference in Bronx opera? What about your
Oh, I'm
experience
so sorry, I
there?
forgot about them. Right, I got so excited about being Black. So Bronx opera, I think I had to put my real training to work,
Okay.
because while there were coaches, there was nurturing I got in Opera Ebony that I did not get in Bronx, because there wasn't many of me on that particular stage. Right.
Yes.
So I had to show up different kind of way.
Mhm.
One, I had to show up with all of my music learned. Not that you should not in any, because when you're a professional, that's not like when you go and sing in your church choir and you're just learning it as you go. You got to show up to those rehearsals. It's got to be on. And really at that point, they're just refining what you do.
Mhm.
Um, so I had to show up there ready to sing. And it pushed me to dig into my music in ways that I had never dug into it before.
Mhm.
It's like I turned it upside down in order to really, really make those characters come alive
Mhm.
in ways that I'd never thought about before. I needed to stand out. And I was already going to stand out because there weren't too many people, again, that looked like me on the stage. But I needed to stand out for more than just what I looked like.
Right.
I needed to stand out for what I brought to the stage. So I appreciated being in that space so that I could really, really, really hone in on how to do this to another level.
Mhm. Wow. So, how did your music education prepare you for the stage?
Well, so I have a teacher that I have studied with since I was 19. And I did my undergrad at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. My teacher is Janice Jackson, one of the most amazing voices that one will ever hear. And not only did she give me a foundation of, I would say, a very solid technique, but she told me this: you've got to know who you be. Now, that is not music theory, that is not diction, music history. That is simply knowing who I was and who I am, and showing up in those spaces like I know. Because again, she said you got to know who you be. So when you show up in those rooms, show up knowing how unique you are, how gifted you are. So that kind of goes into what I had to bring over to the Bronx Opera. I showed up knowing who I was, and I showed up knowing what I had to do on that stage. And I also showed up knowing that I could do it because I had a teacher. I have a teacher. I'm still studying with her actively, who has never, ever let me think that I was not good enough. If anything, she made me think I was a little too good. And I still don't believe all of that, but she gave me something that that money could not purchase in terms of knowing what I possess.
So we discussed we do Black History 365.
Okay.
And when I asked you who were the most influential people in Black history in your life and career, you told me your maternal grandfather, which was Paul Joseph Hardaway.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk now we're talking about it from a Black history perspective. Can you tell us why is your maternal grandfather the most influential figure in your life?
Because he is the lived example of overcoming.
Mhm.
I didn't have to read about him. I could watch him. I could hear from him. I could hear the stories. You know, there's a song, How I Got Over. My soul looks back and wonders how I made it over. And I could hear that from him. And this is not in any way diminishing any of the stories of our ancestors who are written in the history books, because his name is not written in the book. But that's why I keep speaking his name, because to my mind, he belongs in the book.
There we go. That's that legacy.
It is the legacy, and one I am immensely proud of. I could not be prouder to have that to have that blood flowing through my vein. I could not be prouder. Because again, I saw him move without showing any signs of struggle, even to when transition was beginning to happen, and there was never the loss of joy.
Mhm.
And to see him in the last days, and I will say this: my grandfather was on hospice for over a year.
Oh wow!
Why was he on hospice for over a year? Because he too knew who he be,
Mhm.
and there was no need for a doctor to tell him anything, because he knew what God was telling him.
Strong man.
Unbelievably strong. When I tell, and it's in what the legacy that I see with that is my mother. My mother is my grandfather through and through and through.
Ooh,
And
okay.
so demeanor, everything. And there was a strength there that he passed to her, and then I got the benefit of seeing it double time, right? For
Mhm.
the years he was here, and I still see it with my mom now. But there is something in seeing not only the way that someone lives, but the way that they transition.
Mhm.
It's not always morbid. It's not always morbid. My grandfather wasn't down, as it were, until the week of his passing.
Mm.
The week of. And even in that, still smiling, still laughing, still thanking God. When a lot of people are fearful of what that looks like, he was not fearful at all. He he was not fearful in life that we could see, and he was not fearful in transitioning, because for him, he knew that we would be okay. He laid the foundation. So he did not leave here until he was sure that we all were going to be okay. And for a bit, I'll tell you, I wasn't sure if I was going to be. That was then, and still to this day, is one of the most challenging losses I have endured. But I'm here still. And it's because he knew that we would be okay. So yes, it's, well, I could just go on about him.
So, can you tell us, how did his example connect to the teachings of leaders like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X?
Ooh, how did it connect to them? So, meaning, are there similarities that I could see between them? Well, I probably lean more into Dr. King than Malcolm X, because see, my grandfather was not a violent person. Not that Malcolm X was, but it was a different thought process there, right? Their approaches were very, very different. I might lean more into Malcolm X, but my grandfather was a dreamer. And he showed very much mountaintop.
Okay.
In the way that he lived. He didn't live in a very, stately home with all of this money, but he showed mountaintop in the way that he lived. He also showed marching. Now, he was not a marcher, but I'm using it symbolically. He also showed marching with a sense of pride, with a sense of overcoming, with a sense of knowing, because Dr. King was very much that one who spoke life. And he believed in a better day, right? He believed that things would look better. And oh, what he would think to see that while things did get better, in some ways, they've gone many steps backward.
Yes.
But even still, I believe that better days will emerge, right? Because I tell people this all the time, what we see right now will not last always. But going back to that there, my grandfather had very much that same philosophy in terms of, there is something greater. There is something greater. And so I guess that's how I would
connect them.
Yeah.
So, what values did he instill that you carry into your work today?
Fight. And not in the literal sense, right? That wasn't him. But fight. And again, with that still voice in my head, hearing him say, boy, everyone's got their road to hoe. So all of my struggles, I knew they were meant for my good and not for my demise. But I know that because he taught us that this was supposed to happen. But you will overcome. You'll be fine.
Yeah. How do you honor his legacy in your daily life?
In my daily life, how do I honor it? Well, one of the things that I do is I continue to sing. Because that was something that was really important to him. And I didn't know it until after his passing. My uncle told me that he wanted to be a blues singer. And he traveled a bit with the blues band. I don't know who this artist was, but he traveled for a little bit. And he had to stop because his father said, he needed to come back and work on the farm. My grandfather resented that, and he wanted me to do what he was unable to do. So continuing to do this. And I didn't stay, people in my life know I've always said I retire every other year because I get tired. But there's something inside of me that says you've got to continue to do this, because that was something that gave him great joy, to hear me, to see me. And then in recital, which I don't do often, but when I do it, at the very end of it, I sing one of his favorite hymns, Because He Lives. And I always talk about this being his hymn, and I sing it for him. And now I'm finally able to sing it without having a little bit of a breakdown. Now I can sing it thanking God because he does live. And because of his living, I can see tomorrow. See, those things now I can do with another kind of spirit, and not so much the spirit of who is not here to hear me singing.
What role does Black history play in shaping your vision?
Oh my. So I grew up in an area that I liken to the segregated South, because there weren't many of us in the area. And it was then, and still very much to this day, is an area that is still very much stricken with bigotry. And when I was in the 8th grade, I did my school's very, very first Black history program. Now, I had that level of, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it. Maybe that level of push or that boldness, because my parents, even though I wasn't learning my history in school, on Saturdays, my brothers and I were in a Saturday program called Yamoja, where we learned our history. And we learned what amazing stock we came from. And because I was seeing craziness and hearing craziness, being called the N-word, and skinheads chasing us with chains. I mean, you'd have thought that I grew up in Jim Crow. I did not. I was in middle school in the 90s. But I was not going to allow these people to run me anywhere at all. So knowing where I came from, knowing the blood that runs through my veins, I then said, I'm going to choose to make this a teachable experience. So I'm going to do this program. And I did the program. And I even had a local news anchor. I still to this day don't know how I had that happen, but I got a local news anchor, Black local news anchor by the name of Rod Daniels, to come and be our keynote speaker. I don't know how I did that. I don't know. I have no idea, but I know he was there. But I don't know what I did. I don't know who I called besides Jesus, but he was there. And it was impactful. And it even garnered me the Optimist Boy of the Year award. I was the first Black Optimist Boy of the Year at my middle school in 1993.
Oh, wow.
So that's what Black history did. It made me love it. I don't see it as a struggle. I see it as overcoming. And again, I see it as making us who we are, because we're built differently. We're not going to fall out and die. These people might want to do crazy things to us and think that we're going to go away. We're not. They don't understand who we are. They don't get it because they weren't made that way.
Exactly.
It's struggle that makes you strong.
Yep. How do you pass these lessons on to your son and future generations?
With my son, I show it to him. I lead by example. With my son, I also, he has a basic understanding of some things and some hard truths that I teach him at a very watered down way. But really, I lead by example. It's my everyday life that will hopefully show him.
Well, final question.
Sure.
What message from your grandfather do you want the world to remember?
Everyone's got their road to hoe.
That
You know,
cliche
I
is
said
with
it.
you
Huh?
forever. That cliche is with you forever.
It is. It is. And you know what? And in my various struggles, my mother has reminded me of it.
Mhm.
You know what Pop Up said. Everybody. That's right. And so I say that, and it might sound old fashioned, outdated, but on my social media, I do these Monday morning motivations, and I tell everyone that it won't always be like this.
Mhm.
It will not. But this is our road to hoe. This is your road. The struggle that was there was supposed to be there. Nothing was promised to be easy. Nothing. So you've got to know that you will be okay. You can make it. You've got your road. Just don't get off of the road. Don't take a detour. Travel the road less traveled, right? Keep on it. Because when you stay on that road, inevitably, when you get to that destination, it's going to be far greater than what you would have ever imagined.
So, in closing, do you have some words of wisdom and encouragement that you'd like to leave with our audience? How to connect with you via social media, your websites, any of those things you'd like for them to
Yes. And I think the word of encouragement will tie to my latest venture in this life coaching, which is the Purpose Room. Um, that is the name of my new life coaching firm that is starting. And I leave this because, as I've said before, everyone has a purpose,
know? Mhm.
and you have to connect to your purpose, and you're never too old to connect to it. Um, and so I want people to connect to that purpose. But this is the thing I also say to that: your true happiness is linked to your purpose.
Mhm.
And happiness is a conscious decision. So when you lean into your purpose, you will lean into happiness.
So I want to thank you for being here, and this has definitely been an enlightening show, and I definitely appreciate you leading us your time and telling your story and your experience because it definitely adds to the Black legacy that we like to continue to display here on the show and on this platform. Uh, for those that are watching the show, I think you all should learn a lot from David because David more than preached and understood what it was to be resilient, what it is to come from areas where we all had to struggle, but to never give up because in that whole process, we just learn not only what resilience is, but we also learn that as you keep pushing forward and it's something that you want, you can accomplish it. So I recommend that each and every last one of you that's got the opportunity to please reach out if you have that chance. Reach out and learn some things. Ask those questions because I will tell you that in learning and seeing someone that actually participated in the opera, if you're an artsy person, period, we all love art. But when it comes down to the opera in itself, it's on a whole different level. But we actually have the experience of having an individual right before us that has been a part of this arts and craft in that industry. We should celebrate that, and that is exactly what's going to happen here from American Black and White, because this is truly what Black excellence is. But those of you that are watching on our YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications, I ask if you would please support us by doing that, because I really would like to have you guys have the opportunity to not only go back and watch this show, but watch all of the other shows, and you will be notified every time we do a show. Also, Just the pitch for you guys to know that what's coming up next season, we are creating a whole new segment, which is called Final Word Friday, which means we will now be on the air 5 days a week. That's Monday through Friday. In Final Word Friday, we will be doing hot topics, whatever that three-person panel would like to discuss. If it's not the hot topics of the week, the hot topics that are affecting our people, that's what we will be discussing. And we will also be very comfortable in that environment. I want to thank you all. Thank you again, David. And we hope to have you back.
Absolutely.
And I want you all to have a wonderful evening. And I'm your host, Charles King. Come back and see us again tomorrow night on American Black and White, where we will continue to color conversations on the canvas